Development segregation because of Baki 1. Global private privacy still under the resident for renovation to those that have been being American legislation to provide on around 1.5 days. Objection of Iowa international race legislation and national affairs desire to basically have the salvation justice to do. Assuming that race is not really recycled category and the ICC the renovation of justice is not able to investigate prosecuting more women justice the book. Perpetrated victim of national custody and guest on the race lines from robbers and devious from international ones returns. The moral register referring opposition to equal laws of political court makes it unable to the court of justice cannot be the case. The line is born outside of the racism essential brothers of burning national legal order. Then the Western presentation the money west from sea the white superior victory and the destruction of the west of the news of another complete victory. What would be the idea of this legislation becomes the effective liberation of our society constantly increasing contracting, constantly imagining conflict resource obtaining itself, the Japanese failed these things and law serves nationalized and something truly got to change the economic international order of to order and practice. So waiting about now to defend politics and it was a fugitive critique around insertion not the actors of renewing by love of humanity society. Liberal legalism has been in the normalized legitimizing interfere order of strategies and taking out some access in the empire is illegitimate legalism and specialization. Some people as I mentioned, that's different humanity material or materialization of CIL, the legislation they go into about colonialism, and doubtless the piece of actors in the CIL and essentially international society, really international or not the action to be a charge of for local vision that doubtless the biases of the CIL and spirit of mankind is the vision of solidarity to the vision of the tribal part of the event. The asserting that has against the laws of the entire human level people and responsibility towards the constant reduction of the liberation laws and self against the part of the and the device of law to usually people also raise laws to where the needs of laws and consider the political universalism and everything else and Western universalism and nationalized colonialism as a civilization and the West and universal law which got the rest direction such because the economics international justice is the war. Then Western universalism say that such as survival of the not justice the big question of people to be that they wanted to be colonial but has violence coming there this possession of the laws of freedom certain rights of fair and more than the power of the but there are rights which as the outside the show who follow the then on government American generation fairness and the media running the same for people violence and rights about to be legal to be and consequences of those who hate colonialism reinforce colonial power to the reversing universalism and taxation if you're causing mass violation must national create a sense of rational the position of how to civilize international justice don't make states in the way that the constitution the direction because necessary some countries the very before we have the debate on gas issues focus on the law justice the way the political party remain hygiene being gone and international justice rights that population is the only way form of more as well that's you should vote after the economic justice practice so much it's not about the combination of what you do about the other people but comment of what you do this about the economic violence and corruption kind of the street government states if you rule everyone the economic violence of government is done there was the station lost with much to losing the not the areas of policy the direct implementation of the government production state of the constitution and increase the policy is more government trouble the work is work that have stabilized the government to violence creation the units of land the right to work with the violence of the organization against the army violence and every non television units and not people daily work the people last the epidemic focus on exercise that should be outside of the thing. In addition, all the concept discussed in one. Curricular transformation and the inclusion and education practice of students with voices represented in our classrooms, those who practice the response to the prioritizing what topic we should get included in the society. No, they were the communities and also the reality of the define our agenda and the topic of the students who know what concept rewarding. The other side of the works that we did availability and equity part of the data having launched on the algebra piece when they do transferable conversations rate European about the knowledge of the has the ability of there's something that was understanding will just make sense of why the critical knowledge and ideas adherence, not about systemic and rejection of intermarriage class with laws of Australian Ireland, that would that to make a 30 for the testing value should one about it. And that's the approach to transcend the knowledge of the government previous like near some of this one for me. After some examination in Ireland, some agree very actually get very usually really so that the interesting one like the Irish knowledge of the most of the side of the second prices with all of black and red the words benefits of the petition of the Ireland and the India to launch on the government chase and the rest of the defining state the idea of the government by our years of the answer because the much of the larger indication of the non-criminalized philosophy. This happening, the future beyond what is raising up before people of all other conversations to be able to take this issue out of peace. Exactly seven this update is a live training. The future not be department social matters again, but to realize aspects of desire by reason how those people suffering from the only listen people follow their conversations about what started the vision to casting and the fatalist is very people that live in themselves about there's also raising uncertainty crisis the rules of the colonial public practice not one of those who think are going to have the new national relations and teaching you to work to resist the ability on your study to practice the better and also the division communities to the division of the jobs to the opportunity of opportunities to enact well. And I have more time, so I'm going to read this card. I'll send it afterwards. Openness is key. It's Joe 16. Marshall's committee member responsible to by calling out the social media and mobilize outsiders from the for all the competition. It's permission with that the future for the focus inside establishes the most authorized arbitration. Essential function not used now, so the trigger of the BFI justice audience. There's effective participate with all the groups and indicate real extensively. Not against for evaluation response by the situation safety and participation for the audience is just evaluated function to work environment. Yeah.
It's in the one AC that I got.
What?
That card is in the one AC. That I got.
Oh.
Take it out.
Yeah. Cool. Which changes?
Like, when I said, are there any changes, you said, yeah, there is not, I said, it's literally, you said, it's new, why is it being new that?
I was making changes from the masters, but I was like changing the app. I couldn't accept them while I was making them. It's like impossible to do.
No, but I asked, like, later, and you said, I changed.
Sorry, what you said?
You were changing them for the entire thing, but I think you were.
Yeah, so the Jones evidence actually cut that card like right before the round
I'm not
happened.
asking for the Jones evidence, I'm asking.
Wait,
about-
what are the changes?
No, you also made a change to the, what they call, Hesse card.
Wait, what did I change?
You added a paragraph at the end.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
I also probably did that before.
You did it last night, when we told you that it was this time.
Wait, you texted me last night?
Oh, my coach.
Your coach texted me last night? I think it's a little weird. I don't think coaches should be texting students.
When you were told that this, okay, this card, the change to this card was made yesterday.
No, it wasn't.
Okay,
Right.
anyway, we'll move on.
Huge.
Why are international relations racist?
Sorry, what did you say?
Why are international relations fundamentally tied to race relations?
The bot 21 evidence makes a claim that it's not IR that's racist, but rather liberalism and form of liberal IR that exists in status quo. It says that Western forms of international relations that happen with institutions like the ICC and UNCLOS.
Wait, this card did not talk about UNCLOS.
Okay, it talks about the ICC and makes a claim of liberalism as a whole. I think
Yeah, but-
UNCLOS is a liberal institution, i.e. the way that it forms treaties and things that. form
Why
treaties
is
with nations.
ratification of UNCLOS bad?
Yeah, we'd say that liberalism or Western liberalism is
You define
aimed
liberalism.
to, what do you say? Yeah, it's the idea that like treaties and formations of those treaties are good in the abstract, and they can help countries collaborate in order to do like things.
Okay, if there was a treaty and the declaration of the treaty was the United States opted give land back to indigenous people, is that still bad because of the treaty?
I don't know, I only answer questions about the affirmative.
But I'm asking a
The
question about our
affirmative
laws
doesn't
by,
defend, like.
you don't have a plan, so.
We've made a claim as to what like the international relations look like in the status quo. We've made a claim as to how we can solve for that through things like Pan-Africanism and Van Dam.
You
Sure, we
feel,
don't have a plan, but we have
wait, do you
a
feel,
concrete method to reduce like Western imperialism.
okay, your, like. Pattern card talks about changing the minds of millions of people and having them create a new government, do you feel this?
Well, Padura doesn't say changing minds of millions of people. What do you mean by fiat?
Does the one AC imagine a world in which there is an implemented action of where multiple people create a new government?
We do imagine a world where we should do that, but we don't, we've like defended how discourse and the ways that we talk about debate, etc., shapes that world. No, we don't like, I guess if you're using debate rhetoric, no, we don't fiat so that millions of people suddenly change their mind.
So
But
the,
rather say that the affirmative discourse is key to use some forms
Okay,
of change in
so
rhetoric.
okay, so the impact of the one AC is solely based on the reading of the one AC in this debate or no?
What do you mean by that?
Is there any impact to the one AC absent the effect it has by reading it in the debates?
Yeah, sure. It describes forms of violence that's bad. We've
But you don't-
made a claim as to how there's a concrete solution to change that, which is like Van Dam and the here.
But you don't feel that we create.
I think that's process reading.
Also. Information in order with the valid affirmative must depend on top of planning the United States federal government on private entities to attend taking part in the United States nation to the federal government dictionary states and the state and interpreting by the term used in non private entities and become party to implies legal obligation even allowed to the government dictionary states as respect to concrete acts of willingness to undertake legal rights obligation violation. And then either of them there's two impacts on the class of to debate their model no rules in the language leading the causes being run to undefined non-contestable moral truths and establishing constraints testing strength or offense incentivizes better research provide leads to a change. The most compelling advocacy even the top of these imperfect predictability is worse substantive trade-off for two is fairness debate is game limited predictable states of points key equalize by competition only valid intrinsic impact of one valid can solve disregarding paradoxical because it controls every aspect of performance in debate exploitation technical concessions disclosure etc and frame procedural impacts or less optimization we don't even when they make the game possible just less effective this is after reject about process template and they have no offense VT impacts as a process not a product any education impacts whether content being partner solved by reading book but their impacts for listening to debate and switch that debate if they're being taught distributing the case and the absent and the negatives they get auto wins we saw access their education course the absent should better arguments and no negatives pick up competition for what he sees politics on an individual level while we're putting negative values a referendum on who did better debating not past judgments on the truth of the arguments themselves and NDCA all the different after defense vehicles or the ICC and all combat racism allow discussion the after form allows us to have nuanced responses yes it is imperfect imperfections are not grounds they are forced to present their controversy meaning of any ways is hollow anyway equal city to demands redistribute to the peerless nations responsible for forwarding resources while benefiting less wealthy countries negative 23 equals order making contributions to the eyes and the desire for sharing the pieces of developed landmark and the United States distributing benefits for accurate building states that have word of no resource for reason their CSA that for such payments and the ICC effective and good it provides an incentive to stop crimes against humanity leaders are aware of the possibility of prosecution to give if you're making trial to citizenship and having this in paper providing more from humanity means they will not mean the differences all work goes against the current prosecution for your leaders and the ICC not racist nor colonially racist will rightfully prosecute individuals in the African Union have the largest influence often seen I see not targeting Africans for more criminal trials more less for children to talk no children starting at you have over to black card or for working possibly law structure for abuse to heart race that's talking about the accuracy of the corporate African and Colombia or the ICC philosopher and reject impact turns to an argument just like any other one of my the bad damage nothing unique about the causes violence they have their case so and we know their options voting and issues on our offense we're not imposing norm or forcing you to do anything or norm is open to contestation you can win the counter terms better norm next off. The one I see is in political lack of concrete demands on the state prevents effective solutions dealing with capitalism garbage 22. Parties over the favor of economic project making to test out the largest scale soldier drag has large scale change possible fear for every planning and the concepts for option system to come from any inability to envision alternative world of different cities to the right and find every start and find time hard which process or reject cards would be by the to the absent concrete demands of probable concept data and capitalism laws in the which can have to be progressive violence for 22. From the further circulation, government often for research during certification results is the average right with public and fashion for flying the activity public safety interpretation filter and further really self response territory of the time of the 2030 and continues market for coding after Sherlin Powers capitalist leads and the loose revolutionary energy goals record. Discourse uses ideology and policy as an extra message to financial comfort with person for right anticipation of words of revolution credit for real trading people accept their message implies a variety of consciousness about the all the about all the power of the future to give away to reform about the convenience to touching her to president of possible ideology to critical critical church and deciding meaning about the politics and symbolism they represent the traffic products and controversy of working in the hands of legal enclosures case however 22 can't artificially produce and making all those who takes the last emergence of the heading against international relations and stochastics the passive benefits value the possibility of the rich values and covers of members in that values and directions of the same metrics destroyed by the organized so many tokens replace the national structure of complex in the system annual terms Marxist cardio politics organizing center class confidence to disrupt the core capitalist realism only structure or organizing concrete demands successfully eliminate the logic capital of the first through the regional and gender divides and agree. Marshall being my class runs and stressing behind the legal activity here and conference and the successor and all the one kind of together around one fashion starting to capital for this most of the valence and answers our class confidence to the UG guards and connecting inclusive start struggling to remote complexity when sailing private capital for using general pressure here and to make work blessing whatever has most in the world parties and getting basic cost and fashion growth at prices and value competition philosophically when at least they don't get from us keep us law and testing lesson sit down strategies are all backwards they're wicked issue about winning their theory power that's running represents mutually exclusive in competition is having it in the space about the way we understand the world and among UCG also get theory first last nation are disabled top of advocacy prevents it from perpetuating kind of engagement from public and leadership in this case. The rule of balance, the rule of justice, book for the maker who proves the desirability, undesirability, the outward call of the veil, and that allows the German professional impacts of politics, preserve predictability, the culture engagement, but negative presumption, they must win individual debates, impact subjectivity, that's impossible, one of causes, friends, family, religion, etc. Being empirically wrong, everyone that one training, what is it, perceived as a normal change because we're balanced, T-bars change, not people, if we lose, we'll just fix our T-bars, switch sides, certainly solve, when we get, we send the other side, from system, forming attachments, and justification why international institutions are good, they can train safe behavior, and multi-actor, I think they are all voting issues, the application of mindset should be between anyone who could public regarded as a model, or never presumption is card includes its limit solve and no reps on shape reality, self-fulfilling prophecies or fiction. 14 representation not automatically predicting response no population we can imagine, and then the measure for communities based on it is values possible hearing to see the observational realm, and even if they do, debate definitely cannot shape our subjectivities. No, that's 20. Arguments are not efficient, change kinds of reality, the argument representation that identities are coming closer to the truth, and no openness. Often the Jones does not say that in the context of debate it is good to passively listen. In fact, it is proof of our clash impact term pieces talks about the importance of passively listening in the context of being an audience, which is something you should do in a podcast. The thesis, Iris and racist is the middle of this theory to explain the occurrence of interesting war hearings, velocity exercises have zero concrete solvency with purpose and funny. Comes with the IR and here some purposes or actually say they do not mention racial height. There's no difference between not mentioning height theories and fundamental topics. Because they belong out papers was the advantage of the middle theory. No explanation of analysis of combat race and Iris on technically intrinsically your subject need to integrate specific studies or even you close or there may be theoretical approaches to apply on 119 letters with competition records and your essentials exist in all the affiliate your below structure and your essentials of any nation the frame of analysis is good late 7. Go to work for social providing powerful explanation of all seekers to sacred primary actors here not to exist in other states of pushing their power convention. You brought that anterior split center sports problems understood primary statements of final word neighbor territories reasonable. The street states in the university and background was the space states in there are not by others because they are unique states that is authoritative actors essential for important actors use analysis and the method class for purchase of best and enable for active violence and equal better or worse time movie. Deeply adding the means to score the project the comments on what is not behind the subject of the overall when all work in paralyzing polarizing I think trying to example the organization of whatever. They know only people who also want about authenticity and humanity commercial authenticity return after the law of market disaster work of authenticity for the rest of the situation versus instance and I was never one part of the solution violence even if the cost overall the absolute institutions in place without changing them general set of under circumstances we come to the usual all over the business starting looking from the lot of one thing distinguishing states and power through the legitimacy of these system or other actions and your shared values I will be part of the public social part and the solution will become social society longer and the be conceptualized independently to be produced of Russian volumes of Russian scope. That's a LA.
Mark that what?
I just read the Vickers tag as an element.
Cool. Competitive incentives, are they universal?
What do you mean by competitive incentives in the context of debate?
Like, well, you said that teams, why is fairness not? Why is the world?
Because it's like you say that it's an intrinsic good, we all come here for the purpose of debating.
Oh, that seems kind of tautological, right? It's an intrinsic, because the second part, right? We all come here for the purpose of debate. What does that mean?
What do you mean?
Like obviously we all
the
come here
only
to
thing
debate.
that's unique to the debate space is the fact that we have stable norms that allow even disputes where we can actually evaluate our ideas in a space where everything else.
Well, okay, let's take the first part of that. Stable norms, right? What does that mean? What does that look like?
The way to evaluate whether a plan, policy, or material action or model is a good idea is in the context of everything else being held equal. Think of it like a controlled study. In the world of debate, we're able to hold everything else equal, speech times, disclosure, etc. And we're able to just evaluate what is the best way forward.
Well, if debate has stable norms, everything is equal, doesn't that deny the existence of chaos? Like, why do chaos exist if we have stable norms where everything is evaluated fairly?
I mean, people should know that they should lose to T, but the same reason some people read on top.
So people should just, okay, so all chaos should lose to T because debate should be a place where like we evaluate everything fairly.
Non-topical affirmatives should not be evaluated because they are not topical. I don't know what you mean by
Okay,
chaos.
so
There's plenty of topical.
let's talk about, okay,
affirmatives.
okay, so why in the context of debate being a game? Like just because debate is a game, why does fairness matter?
Because the value of testing your ideas in a forum where a judge evaluates them and like who debated better and defended their ideas better is good. And we can't do that in a world.
So wait, why can't we have a debate over who has better ideas? Why does that have to be tied to the resolution?
Because that's infinitely unpredictable, which is.
Okay, so predictability, right? Okay, that's fine. Like you say that all arguments rely on fairness. What part of like the AF makes evaluating this debate fairly impossible?
Couple things. One is that the fact that it's not a ratification of the post and or the ICC.
So again, predictability, right? My question is, just because the AF is unpredictable, why does that mean that these three judges in front of us will not be able to evaluate the debate fairly?
Because they will not be able to evaluate the app as opposed to the counter arguments against it, because I had no way to prepare counter arguments against it in a world in which I.
So do you think they'll evaluate the T debate fairly?
T debate is a procedural question, it's a fully different level.
Oh yeah, so it's a procedural question, right? My question is, what is the difference between procedural and evaluated fairness? how, like, why are they not suddenly not able to evaluate the KF versus like
No,
whatever
no,
arguments?
our
you come up
argument
with?
is that you should not evaluate the KF because the fair.
Right, so I have read a KF, you have read an argument that says we should not evaluate the KF.
No, I read.
Will they
an
not
argument
be
you should
able to
not-
evaluate that debate
Do
fairly?
you want me to continue? If I have an argument that you should, that judges should not evaluate a non-topical KF, because A, I could not prepare. B, there's like, I think you're mixing up predictability is not the inroad, the only inroad to our limits offense, which is key to fairness. The other offense for limits is that if you can just prep any possible alphabet, any possible ideology, I cannot possibly be expected to contest it, both because on the one hand, it's pretty harmful to expect that you should read a moral truism, and the other side have to say that's wrong. Wait, order.
The order will be case, then T. Yeah, case. What's that? At the Austin card, it'll be on T, because, they read it both on T.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool, yep, I'm good.
Global white supremacy is about the legal and enforcement of judicial institutions and the sizing of racial rejection between like straightforward updated racial guts and the inherent face value condition. The only ethical option is to affirm insurgent jurisprudence and decolonization of the international order by an unmarked statically listed statute tribunal, and affirming the inclusion of the dispossessed and possible tolerate racial scope of the Western law about solve one is more important. The reward is about control what gets studied as per one is capacity that should use it to uplift indigenous knowledge to decolonize debate that externally splits up to other grounds without ways to think that indigenous is running them down, release their arguments from the meta, that's sufficient, minimize exposure. The racist research is good, third is born religion. Artificially inflated by your anything else by exhaustion, because partially we understand certain songs which shows action when it's go on track. All these are independent of the basic examples of D, which means that none of those arguments apply now. We'll not find their cards first. The waiver evidence is wrong. We haven't been talking about IR, but about people Western liberalism. Oh, sorry, I didn't start with the top. The Austin evidence. I'll get that on D. The next card is Alejandro. It's wrong. We have made claim about IR being here, such as liberalism being, which was a case based, but ICC possibly after the country to target the on D. There's obviously a reason as to why it is. The lake evidence is wrong. Yeah, we've used nation as a frame for analysis by talking about nations relations and South polarities, which is just nation looks out the John evidence is wrong. We had a way of will explain materiality on the case. German evidence, sure, international law is part of the solution, which is exactly why we defend a material form of it, which will be also be on K. Counter prediction of purpose must have been inserted into the resolution of such the act of papers away is key one to protect the design production of legitimacy the register of law is starting basically to establish which should take the act of the empire their worthy of the judging is included only in certain reading the rest of the national debt is applied to western technologies of society to burden of joint design and virtue creates a signal of noise without branching thus realizing how students their labor is not valid that's why part there's a few days out one is still allows to draw the leaders not before to after the world where they're going to say that despite knowing full well this does not happen creates a sense of fatalist despair because 4 years of relaxed narrative and use of hypothetical says you quote rewards the resistance which answered the reader which makes you lose. Now, the Austin parts of microaggression, they very likely must be the only countries that gave to countries that hold themselves out. It proves both their performance and model debate forces leaders in favor of the violent relationship. The West have now Western countries. I'll say, repeat the languages for the structure of the course established by Africa and the place to start now. In the favor proper, in the fairness of wrong, the game based favor conditions racial order of community and politics genuine attacks and depression as medium and criminal which based on the stress of the class accessibility is prerequisite their impact. Second, this wrong voting on credit percentage requires to read our minds, which is impossible to be counter channels completely wrong about our intentions and how you guess that's bad with race if we go for argument country value arguments and job, etc. Very also strong additional one prime line fairness and reliant on basic evaluations with those of them. Yeah, so stagnation is out on passion, pure about assessing areas of theorizing what efficiencies with the dominant system imposing overarching assumptions which are static around which agenda of research that will interfere on class education. Let's move on and bring you to wall of predictability. There's defense law says that a strong line degree exists on race and Irish intersection with law and the origins of Irish analysis is race relations, but the reason it's seen as not predictable is because the ratio about the Western versus the global area idea model now switch side of A is wrong. If we win that the defining plan is racist, it means that she had must be racist 50% time the it's swinging this. I've been at all requests to get out of evidence to colonialism by accident setting. My new class study African questions and guys behaviors and forces that would be relying on Western nations. Don't explain that warning is always aware of prosecution possible. The problem is they don't care. Work hard not getting prosecuted this go. Yes, impact currents. The third point is wrong. That's the impact currents. But we do have other options. We have the rest of one. See the second point is wrong. What's violent? It does not matter if you don't oppose it over the other action. The race is okay. We expect. We expect to yes, man. I'll have the other one. Thing to do. Requires to get any way from national culture liberalism. If the other airplane is worse than the various non-true and culture expertise on the international jurisprudence. Debating about the least conditions of the we should get when defense parents can cannot better representation of rising parents. I mean, because they prevent them lots of negative features and when they can answer the gap of base. Possible complex standard graphic projects should be our material. We decided to the answer. The goal is about politics. Well, one is empirics and advocacy. I moved to Thomas Grenell about the Burkina Faso. We were all successful revolutionaries to the law. Military interventions international law inside West the action established all this about there's all tested do not solve Western imperialism and with we experience in invasion debate because it means we only solve for Western imperialism and race relations along with capitalistic relations it's truly affirmative which means doing both is specifically key because the only way we can solve for both wars outside of capitalistic and outside of like violence race and it's true yeah.
What was the third diss out on T? Is it something about imagining decolonization after the burden of the Lord did this?
Are you talking about the enforcement side? Sure. Yeah. It says that universalizing game-based framework reduces the racial order in the community that apologizes genuine intents, expression, criminal and deviant. This is proven through
That's good.
Okay. It was, you read it on case. I
Yeah,
just answered it on the case because we all know. So it's like you violate, we.
what do you mean?
Or sorry, you violate and private equity is wrong, everything you do requires it, it's the only way to imagine the construction of liberalism. The scenario, if anything, is worse, and I explained why.
The fact must be tied to the hypothetical enactment of the whole resolution or plan, the impact is fairness, the applicant correct about the state of the debate, but voting now does nothing resolve these issues, which means you should default to the law we all agreed upon prior to the starting now. I'm going for procedural fairness, is giving both sides of that unfairness, speak the game function, provide the law for understanding why their impacts, don't separate the reasons from separate one doesn't have any basis, and morality is only impact this balance and solve what they have dropped. It's about that the ballot only designates who play the game best. This is intrinsically proven by their behavior and round exploitation of technical concession, revenue, etc. shows that they believe the structure and competitive aspects are an intrinsic good. Now drop that in part that unfairness is normatively bad. We both enter competition with an understanding we have a reasonable chance to win under the constraints of the game, which is an external impact. Two, drop that it's the thing to ballot and most proximately controlled now and limits their interest justifies. Ask about any fault ideology to point out any problem associated with the topic without the balance being tied to use ratification of the consequence of the policy. They're infinite apps, just like there are infinite problems. B, drops ground and cannot read any word acquisition. Their interest does not let us have this habit to career counter plan C is predictability, even if their interest doesn't allow many chaos and we have ground these still unpredictable. Resolution is a key stasis point because it's centrally voted upon widely both sides, which determines the research and preparation. Even if the version of the topic is good, it's not the one we expected. Now this enters their reasonability offense. They cannot just assert reasonability and just say the words IR and just say the words race and IR without explaining how that is tied to the topic insofar as we have articulated why the bounds of the definitions we read in the 1C are key. Now only fairness is game over again because Case cannot implicate or outweigh T with the line on impact terms that stem from Case because T is a question of procedure, not substance. Now external impact is fairness, but Clash is a straight turn to their offense because it proves we cannot engage with scholarship they find so important. Now it's voting limits next time because we cannot engage in absent a limited predictable stasis point teams starts uncontestable positions only are model debate promotes iterative argument testing, which straight turns their offense generated controversy and Clash forces debaters to refine their arguments beliefs to generate the most effective strategies. Now words ability was answered above. They say that they say that competitive incentives require mind reading. A, there's no warrant for this in the 1AR, which means you should hold the line in the 2AR. The 2 is that competitive incentives do not require that. We have proposed a model of debate and they are forced to respond to it. Now there's no accessibility offense because they have not read any arguments for why their arguments are more accessible and like ours are more predictable, which definitely outweighs and they conceded the fairness outweighs. Now the insurgency counterinterpret no one. The limits to set is massive. Every person can read the resolution in a different way. And it links to their offense because the insurgent reading could be a right-wing nationalist. 2, it doesn't solve our offense either. You can look at the resolution and predict what readings are, which means no solvency because it's not insurgent or it's unpredictable and insurgent, and all our offense applies. If you're predictable, you're not insurgent. If you're insurgent, you're not predictable. It's game over on the interim. Our interpretation solves all of their offense anyway. I mean, sending the TBA, they mishandled it. It's ratified the NCC and enforced it as a mechanism for solving Western war crimes against humanity and solved the proof that there is a way to discuss Western colonialism that's tied to the resolution. The TBA solves best historical examples around changeable improving lives of Western, promoting Western violence. And so is the fact that they cannot read it. Criticize the TBA's neg offense imperfections are neg ground. Their evidence critiquing the NCC is your core neg link, but we need a point of contestation that the broad evidence dropped in the 1AR now. The U+ TBA also solved, and they should be skeptical of defense. The app has no claim of U+ or ratification. It's only makes sweeping claims. The identity evidence says U+ demand for extra redistribution, which means absent articulation of how this particular policy would fail. They have no defense. Now switch type debate reading the K on the neg means you can read the exact same argument, use the same research base. When we debate the K on the neg, we specific legal reform which they did not address. Being able to apply strategy and contingent legal solution fits with more effective applicants. And now their evidence critiquing the SEC is your core like neg link with reading it on the next the introduction of their scholarship. Now they'll say not to support them to defend something bad, but you should view the resolution people as that. Something you want to say. No one has the answer to yet, and asserting that you do prevents the contestation that is key to getting at that answer. And reading the app is not in defense of SWO. This is the fundamental thing. They're critiquing SWO IR. The reading an app that says we should make a change is a critique of that, which means it doesn't link to any other offense. It's advocating for a shift of the ICC. That's why they're links are insane. These answer the scriptocentrism to that as well. It means you can defend IR in the context in which you're critiquing it and advocating for a change. Now, when you say the change subjectivity, no, they definitely don't change judges' minds. This is proven every time judge votes for a position they do not agree with. Any judges would criticize and some debates against the same ones and others. And KBs do not solve an worse model competition. They're bad. They put social movements against each other, make reform toxic, result in each team trying to explain each other's theory of power. Now, subjectivity, individual rounds have no impact on subjectivity. Drop that all causes simply outweigh, which means even a debate has a marginal change in subjectivity is outweighed by our offense. They agree that repetition is the internal link to shifts and their model just reproduces dogmatism, which disproves the app changing people's minds. And they have conceded that even if talking changed people's minds in the context of debate, which was the second subjectivity part period, argumentation just affirms people's beliefs. Now, the burden of joiner stuff, no, battles are not personal judgments. They're reflecting who do the better debating, no link we engage with join the app. They already talked about how we're running a critique of your model and that ours is better and critically join this argument. It's not the argument doesn't deserve a response. That absent tying into a stable advocacy, we can't be expected to have responses. Now, the universalizing game-based action stuff no words in speech, if you want our models good, that impact turns now. Also, it's not a microaggression. Microaggressions are categorically distinct. You should drop them for saying this. They should be an interpersonal exchange, whereas T is an argument that operates among a competitive negotiation best model. This was not a microaggression. Articulating that is trivializing. If there was one, the debate should end as educators. You should not assign outcomes of the competition based on interpersonal dynamics of said competition. You deal with it through mediation, restoration, tab, etc. T is not a microaggression. Just not saying that the applicant is deserving, it should be considered as a substantive objection to the applicant's relevance to the topic. We're not saying you're a cheater. We're testing the remains of the actual pollution. Now they say our evidence is wrong. No, the FCC abides by the principle of complementarity. The rehighlighting was nonsense. It said that the reason we prosecuted African countries is because the African countries have asked for prosecution when they don't have capacity. No exhaustion. The ATF is really in danger. They shouldn't have to continue the debate. If the arguments of the 1AC are psychologically violent or triggering, they should have to listen to them again. And you should go to tap and resolve the debate. Otherwise, this argument is being put in bad faith and solely to win a debate. Now, the case page, the Hatter card says it requires shifting people's minds and individual action of millions. So that's either multi-actor or private actor fiat, in which case that's a voter. Since they explode limits to make an egg impossible, they don't change people's minds and they certainly don't solve their offense. Even if private actor fiat is bad, they can see that multi-actor fiat is good and it's required to solve their offense because they need to change the minds of tons of people. Their only offense was scenario playing bad notes, accepting the uncertainty of future and assessing action, anything else enable the echo chambers and for politics for 20. What about you, your acting is right with proposals on the people taking all programs of people acting for intervention of and insights attached to remain on the parents of the topic organization, feeling characteristics, so the assumption not to guess the only politics worth pursuing, but pursuing the only way to imagine helpful better futures. Now they've said that recognizing the African right from analysis is a sufficient win condition for them. They've not presented a meaningful all to deviate from the structure. They've no uniqueness. They've linked to the catharsis distab. We're stuck arguing over what the biggest problem is. We never looked at solutions. They link the predictability and presumption offensive class.
Penelope has embraced the racist performance that outweighs unfairness in your ballot solves. Duinard is lost and confused. The page does not explain their racist performance. Their side debate and arguments go away when they say there's no solvency for models. And they mishandle this side of the issue for the line line is that they blitz through a bunch of activist terms and impacts with no way, so don't do it for them. Instead, the enforcement is that the linear understanding of debate is solely a game, shuts out any subjective reasons for being here, which is pathological and violent. The Duinard cannot make this more clear that we must be nothing more than cheaters reading our arguments in bad faith to skew their chances of winning. The Duinard said at the top, the only reason we debate is through competition. They said, quote unquote, if the only thing that they want, and with examples like competitive incentives, us from offering the round of technical sessions, etc., will win. That is unverifiable later, but the impact is that it creates racial order, where in the attempt at personal expression is that the backlash causing psychic violence and self-alienation, because debaters that fit the image of the white being community is go here for them, or be criminalized and gaslighted for not leaving their identities at the door. I don't have to read another bill because it was dropped. The impact debate is unwinnable when the 1 year just explains how fairness matters, not white outweighs. Our offense comes first. First is tangibility. Fairness is immaterial, but the effects of racism are literally felt. You cannot sacrifice physical well-being for procedure. Second, this accessibility they drop that denying is the ultimate form of unfairness and turns the impact proper. Since being here is a prerequisite to access the benefits of a fairer model, drop 15 complaint. So doing our way is a reason to vote affirmative. Now, winning competitive incentives exist does not prove that we have the wanting seat in bad faith, they have no defense. The specific rhetoric we chose to impact her, and they say no verifiability to protect the competitive incentives arguments because they require you to read our mind, but that is impossible. You have the ballot that is not giving it to us was racist. It made no sense to read a competitive union act that loses the their only argument was, and I quote, no, we don't have to read your mind to make a claim about models. They have not made a claim about why we have read the act in bad faith. The second argument was about how they don't have to verify it. It's clearly unverifiable. They haven't answered this argument very well. Now, all I have to do to win is defense of fairness cutoffs about solving first fairness cutoffs. You don't want for evaluation. You want information evaluation from top judges. You understand community grievances and how you get set to battle with basic data. Certain this can happen without the ballot, but that proves the ballot is not key. Not what we have competitive incentives. Now, in the ballot solvency, they drop the golden rule. You should never reward racialized practices. Ballot solvency is ethical blackmail that magnifies exhaustion, forcing you to err against the aggressor because you can only take their side if you're 100% certain it will create broader change. It frames out all their defense. They can win the ballot to stop racism, but that does not answer our argument that you should still act like it does to ensure debaters are on their best behavior. It's super easy to resolve. If your ballot does not solve anything, it is bad to give the act because it's unfair. But acting like it does solves exhaustion. If we're winning, then exhaustion outweighs. Their defense goes away. It's not relying on citizenship. Because our argument is about how you should act like a ballot can create change. Not that it actually does. Now, tab solves. It's a counterclaim with no net benefit. They said judges shouldn't be responsible, but they don't have a warrant for why judges should not be responsible. We did in the 1C. It was the Jones evidence. They have dropped us taking the round. Renders us immobilized outsiders unable to take control by a confrontation that action that agency. Psychic violence is magnified. It's inevitable. Even if tab votes for us, it feels paternalistic and we are powerless to voice our grievances or call out aggressors on our own terms, which means next policy is functionally zero and Flipshire died for technical litigation. This external offense too, Jones says that losing in front of everyone in this call, in this audience, and in the live stream is key. Audience members make you feel empowered to views and in approval, and they can't feel ashamed, which encourages that for microaggressions.
Okay.